He wants to jump
1,000 cars. Sir, you have 1,000 cars.
I don't think I'd attempt to try this stunt.
Or we owe this horsepower to Uncle Sam.
Too many cars.
car. You know, roses would be.
Like I put my beer belly on it.
If you can't immediately tell somebody how many cars you have,
you'll really give those uppity yuppies something to think about.
Stay on the bar. Don't go off the bar with your Bronco.
1980 Volvo horns. What's right? I want to have a man's coolant.
and he's like, "Oh, I thought it'd be small. It's for a small car." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's still an automatic transmission. They're never going to be light."
It's definitely going to have to crash.
Starting off with Brad buying another car.
That's the West.
Internet.
You know, is this a Nigerian oil print?
I also wish you drove a Tan Camry.
Anyways,
Anyway,
that's a
horrible,
very
horrible podcast content.
Very
Talking about a picture.
inside joke.
So we can get into that, and then preview Daytona, and then is there any news about happenings at Daytona that we've missed?
I don't know. I already hit record though.
Oh, cool. Sorry, go ahead.
Welcome back to Auto Off Topic. Hello, Brad.
Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I am great.
Excellent. That's positive news.
And,
Podcast over.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Join the Discord and you can just feed us pedantic corrections right into our phones.
Yeah, you should listen to us and then be like, those guys are idiots and I want to tell them. And on the Discord, you can do that.
All right. I've got a correction about the GTP cars we were talking about.
Yes, sir.
From Bradley Brownell. Excuse me. The GTP cars all have a standard Bosch hybrid unit. So I'll use the same one. I remember seeing this during the broadcast.
Yep.
It's like they had them as units. They could swap them in. It makes 150 horsepower and is largely used to help power the cars off the corners. And they run electric only when they leave the pit.
Correct.
And Cadillac's got NA V8s. Porsche and BMW is a turbo V8. Acura uses a turbo V6.
The interesting fact about that is that the hybrid system in each car is identical, standardized. So the engines,
pretty cool.
The engines have their own, manufacturer specs, but then each car has the same Bosch motor generator and the same 7-speed X-Track transaxle and the same 1.35 kilowatt battery operating through 800 volts. So,
yep.
And the limit on the cars was 671 horsepower combined. So at no time can the car make more than 671 horsepower to the rear wheels. So if the engine is capable of almost that, then it can't use full hybrid battery power to make more than that. 671 horsepower sounds arbitrary, but it translates to 500 kilowatts. So that's where it comes from. Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, they have adjustable regen. There was a couple other things in the car that were, different this year from the old, the old prototype cars of the past. And as far as that power, IMSA was monitoring it the whole race. So they have a telemetry system built into the drive unit that can tell IMSA at any time what power that car is putting down. If the car breaks that 500 kilowatt number, then there would be a penalty assessed. So it's interesting, but I don't. It's definitely technology being driven in motorsports that's going to wind up being put into production cars eventually, right? That's what motorsports essentially has always been.
Yep.
So the neat thing is that the system they were using with their hybrid electric unit and with the engine, electronic engine management system that's running the engine, some of the cars were capable of putting out that full 671 horsepower directly from the engine. But when they used that hybrid unit, they had to basically pull power from said engine to use the hybrid unit. So it's kind of a weird setup. Like It's there, but if the hybrid unit went haywire, the car would still be just as fast. The only difference would be it would be using probably more fuel, I assume, so it would be less efficient, and then would have to make more stops. But it's interesting. It's definitely a new
then
thing.
I think they where when you leave the pits, that's when it like pops the clutch and starts the engine.
Yep.
So you don't have to use a starter. I think they were talking about that in the broadcast.
Well, the article I was reading about it was talking about how the engine software they're using is obviously super advanced. I mean, these are GTP race cars. These aren't, somebody's home built hot rod. And it's so efficient and so well monitored that if they were using the hybrid regen system, that regen system would put a drag on the driveline, right? So if, say, you're trying to regen the battery system and the onboard telemetry in the car would be like, oh, this particular regen is sapping our driveline of 68 horsepower right now. So they could change timing and fuel maps or boost or whatever on the fly to make up the 68 horsepower that the regen system was taking from the car during regen. It's significantly more complicated than I thought it was.
Yeah, because I'm assuming they're using the electric motor to make up for low end torque.
Well, there were a couple of things. It was gearing wise for efficiency, so they can use the electric motor to accelerate the car, like you said, because of lack of lower end torque. But it's not, the car doesn't have enough torque for movement. The car is geared for the higher speeds and geared for coming out of corners and whatnot. It's not geared for 0 to 85 or whatever. So it helps.
Yeah,
it helps that torque curve right there, and then it also makes it so that if a driver's in the car and he's like, listen, man, I got another 10 laps, 20 laps in me before I have to come in, and he's within the bubble of the driver's limit of a stint, then having that electric motor in there and the regen system can extend that beyond the old fuel window. So the car could stay out longer between a driver change. So, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like if one team had done it, it would have been a significant advantage, but it didn't fit in the rules. So they made this whole class to fit these cars, and all these manufacturers had to build these cars to play in this class. But it's neat. And I mean, listen, like I said, you see racing has always been developing technology on the racetrack to trickle down into cars. And this is almost the opposite. Like, there haven't been a lot of hybrid race cars, and race hybrids on the street are commonplace. So now we're having hybrids in race cars, but they're probably using some of this technology to develop into street cars, because I mean, some of that technology, like that whole making up horsepower to make up for for parasitic loss, could be a huge thing in street cars in the future. Who knows? But it's neat technology. I'm glad that Bradley corrected us on our statement and made me look into it a little bit deeper. So thank you for that correction, Bradley.
All right. Rally Santini, he's an OEM engineer, and he just reminded us that pretty much everything, this is about the Bronco roof, automotive is tested from -40 to 120 plus Fahrenheit.
Right.
So,
yeah, obviously they're talking about the
that
Bronco
roof did, maybe it
Yeah.
hit below those numbers.
Yeah, even if it didn't hit below those numbers, one
Who
of
knows?
the things that it's like, it's an outlier. Ford was expecting hey, maybe if this happened, if it truly did crack just from temperature and it wasn't because it was -25 degrees and something fell on it, then Ford can be like, well, this is an outlier. We need to find out why it happened. So I'm assuming we haven't heard the whole story there yet, because that story kind of fell by the wayside. And I'm sure that if there
Something
was
must have
more
fallen on
merit
it.
to it, yeah, we might have heard more from it by now. So anyway, more corrections. Thank you.
Yeah, so come join the Discord, because also there is a Dirt Rally Championship, which by the time I think this podcast goes up, you might have already missed the first one if you haven't done it. I started it 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, so the first leg of the event was Monte Carlo, 6 stages. It went for 2 weeks so people could get their stuff together. And the next one is going to be Sweden, and it's going to only go for a week. So it'll be a lot less time to do it.
Right. And I, of course, the forever procrastinator, have not done it yet. So I should probably
I'll give you 2 weeks.
I literally have not turned my Xbox on in probably a year. I should probably do that and get all set up. So
You should just turn it on at least in the morning because it's going to go through updates, I'm sure.
I'll turn it on right now while I'm sitting in front of it. I plan on doing it tomorrow, so I'll get it all taken care of. No stress.
Well, yeah, as long as it's... I think I started at noontime Eastern, so I don't...
Well, tomorrow's Tuesday,
Double-check
so
when
I
it's
should
gonna-
be good.
Oh, okay, right. All right, so you get like, 30 hours.
Yeah, that's fine. If it takes me more than 30 hours, I've lost anyway.
All right. And the way I do these, there are 6 stages. It takes you about a half hour to do it if you want to sit down for the whole thing. Or you can, when you get to a service, you can
Pause it.
basically pause it, come back.
What doesn't take a half
But
hour
I try to put it...
is all the practice you have to do ahead of time in order to be successful. And I haven't played the game in a long time, so I'm going to need 28.
I
of
did
those
like
30
one
hours.
and just like went for it.
Okay,
I feel like with that game, sometimes I'm a little bit better if I just show up
sure.
because otherwise I get in my head about
It's
it.
like beginner's
And
luck.
I'm like, oh, I was so fast. I was so fast during practice. And then I just go too hard and ruin the actual timed part.
Well, I think I will at least need a refamiliarity with the game. So maybe I'll do 1 or 2 and then I'll try it. Excellent. Moving on. What's next?
Yep. I don't know. I think Project Car updates.
Have you done anything,
much
or has
else.
it been not good weather out there?
I did hatch struts to Stephanie's car.
Oh, big one.
Super hard.
Yep. Some cars are annoying on. This one doesn't seem like it, though.
Her car is actually really easy.
Does it have the type with the
Because-
strap on the ends that it's like a metal strap that you just pull off?
Well, actually, it came with a new ball joint part.
Okay.
So you just had to unbolt it from the hatch and not even pop it out of the strut piece.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I put a new one in. It was cool because the old one was all rusty. So it's new. And then the other half of it was just 2 10mm bolts, which the new ones came with new bolts in it. So I got 4 10mm bolts
So
to throw in the toolbox.
on one of those, one end has a bracket and the other end has the ball socket?
The bracket also has a ball socket on it, but it comes with a brand new bracket.
Oh, it's interesting. Were they OEM?
Yeah.
They must have been OEM.
Yes.
Okay, that's why.
I could not find aftermarkets.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they were not cheap. It was annoyingly expensive.
Because I've done struts on the trunks of a couple of Sonatas. Because we have a couple Sonatas in the family, and they go bad eventually. And they have the kind
Yeah,
of...
those are probably little baby ones, though. Little short ones, right?
They're pretty long, actually. They're much longer than you would think, because the trunk opens beyond a normal trunk. It almost lays flat against the back window.
Yeah, G20's like that.
Yeah, it opens way up, and the struts are a little bit longer than I would assume for a trunk strut. But the way they go in there is they have that little, like I said, it's like a metal strap that clamps around the ball socket, and you pop that little strap off, and it comes off. So again, they're not tough to use. You just need to get a pick in there and pull them off. So, but some in my past have been annoying. Like the ones in the Eclipse are not fun because you got to pull off all the plastics for the lower ball socket, and it's a pain in the butt. So, or ones like the 940, the
Yeah,
944 ones
almost
are part of the glass, and it's a huge process.
you can almost get the ones in the Talon.
The driver's side you
But-
can do, the passenger side you have to disassemble. In my experience,
I don't ever remember disassembling to do it, but all I remember is that the hatch is like 50 or 70 pounds.
Yeah, it's not light.
So you're like trying to do it while it's crushing your head.
I mean, Or you do what I did and you just put a broom handle in there.
Yeah, but then I have to go find a broom handle or a friend, and I don't have any friends to help me.
That's
so
true. I moved away. Sorry.
yeah.
No, I usually use a broom handle, and it's usually a broom in the garage, so it's easy enough just to twist the handle up. Or you use the jack handle as a jack in the garage. There are lots of ways to have done it, Andrew. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
You could let it be broken.
I gotta actually change those.
You could let it be broken for another 3 years and have Marco hold it up when he's old enough.
I don't even drive the car enough.
They just go bad just sitting. I mean, they go through cycles of heat and cold, especially in New England like that, so they do go bad.
I think I've gone through 2 or 3 sets in that car's life.
Yeah.
That I've owned it. So
Which is more than half the car's life. So
yeah.
actually, I did the Corolla ones when I first got it too. Those were also fairly simple and very long.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, right? I've had the car longer than how old it was when I got it.
Yeah, it's like almost double. No, actually double,
Yeah.
because you bought the car in
Yep.
2000 or 2001.
2001.
Okay.
It was 1990.
Yep. So it was 11 years old.
Now it's 2023.
Yeah. So you've had it for 22 years.
Yep.
That's crazy. Did you buy it a drink?
Yeah.
That's a long time. I have not.
I've had
The only thing, like, I've had my Camaro, obviously, but other than that, I've never had a car that long, have I? I don't have anything from
I
2001.
don't know. I had the Galant. Galant was 2011. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. What car did you buy in 21?
G20.
All right. So now you have to keep all those cars forever, because every 10 years you buy a forever car.
Oh, I guess
That's
so.
a pattern. So whatever you buy in 20...
G20 is kind of a forever.
Whatever
car.
happens in 2030, you want to stay with you too. So I've now damned you to that forever. So you did hash struts in the Subaru. I finished the Corolla wagon. Well, I finished the project I had started last week. So I think after last week, I had the fenders off the car, and I had put the fenders back onto the gentleman who I traded fenders with and sent him on his way.
Yeah, you talked about trading with him.
But I didn't put the fenders on my car because my intention was to paint up under the fender. I did not do that because every day that I had a chance to paint the fender, it was like 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts here. And I was just super annoyed and tired of waiting, so I just put the car together.
It's not a big deal to paint up under
It's
there.
not a big deal. And you can't really see much anyway because the tires really fill the fenders. And what they don't fill, they have fender liners. So it's pretty well covered inside. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm super happy with it. I can't even express how happy I am with how it came out.
It looks really good. Those wheels cleaned up really well.
Yeah, I mean, the wheels look better.
I kind of thought they would.
They look much better in pictures. Like if you see them up close, they're not great, but the car is not great. So it works just fine.
I've seen worse wheels.
I've definitely seen worse. And when I tell you that I put probably 8 hours into cleaning them, that's not an exaggeration. I was in the garage all day, and I was like sore from my lower back to my shoulders by the time I was done because I went through 2 batteries on the 12-volt Milwaukee. I went through 2 batteries and a ton of polish, and what I was using was Mother's, I think it is, not McGuire's. They used to make that polish ball, or they still make that polish ball that you can put in a drill, but they also have one now that's cone shaped. So I bought the cone shaped one in order to buff the wheels because you get into like the smaller areas between the bolts and stuff better. So rewind a little bit. I got the wheels from you, I don't know, actually probably about a year ago because I brought them out here stacked up in the Saab. So that was January of 22. Knowing I was going to put them on something, the initial plan was to put them on the Cressida, but then I got a Corolla and they fit the style of the Corolla so well. So they needed to be cleaned up because you bought them from Japan and didn't do much of them.
It's pretty typical.
Yeah, they're just old. They're pitted and dirty and just...
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that you'll find on Japanese sites is like that. That's like pretty cheap.
Yeah, because they sat in a junkyard.
And
Probably.
then it's yeah, I don't know. People just didn't take care of them. Like they're not Watts, but they're
Black Racing.
the black racing version of Watts that are on the G20. Were like super dirty.
Right.
But then when I cleaned them up when I got here, they're awesome.
Mhm.
It's like, why don't they just clean them before they try to sell them?
My assumption is the car goes to the junkyard and they take the wheels off and sell them separate, and you're basically buying them from a junkyard. That's my assumption. That's why they're cheap. So I don't know for sure, but anyway, so I used the the name brand of polish I've been using all the time now. Chemical Guys, a combo of their heavy metal polish and light metal polish. I probably should have put like a polish, like actual like protecting wax coat on afterwards, but I didn't do that yet because I was just literally out of steam. So I did that for an entire day. That was one of the days that I was going to be painting and didn't paint because I spent all day cleaning wheels. But they cleaned up halfway decent enough. They had metal valve stems in them. So I took them out because I don't know if you know how metal valve stems work, but they like bolt onto the wheel. And
all the Japanese wheels come like that, and I always take them out.
okay,
Just put regular rubber ones.
so
in.
they have metal valve stems on them, and the way they mount is they bolt onto the wheel. There's a thread on the back, and there's a rubber seal top and bottom. And the problem is that rubber seal was like super hard plastic.
Yeah,
but I loved how they looked. So I said, I bet I can buy these pretty inexpensively with brand new nice rubber seals. So I did. I went on Amazon. Apologies to all our Amazon haters. But I went on Amazon. It was $9 for 20 of them. So I bought a package of them. Super happy with them. They're nice and short. They have that nice chrome finish that matches the lip. They look really cool. So that's a bonus. Next step was tires. And I went back and forth. I went back and forth with you and people on Discord with tires for a while because obviously 14-inch wheels, there's not a ton of options, right? Like there aren't a lot of cars that use 14-inch wheels anymore. There are specialty companies making very, very nice 14s, but there's not a ton of options in like I just want a decent set of tires. You have a ton of Chinese tires from like companies like Linglong and all these other off brands that you don't know, and most of them have a really bad looking sidewall. So the size that I really wanted was a 185, 50, or 55 14, because that would give me enough width to not be really skinny and a small enough sidewall that would be fairly equivalent to the 195 60s that I took off. But those 195 60s, or 195 50s, 195 50s that I took off were stretched. So that means that the overall height of the tire was lower than it would have been if they were mounted on a proper size wheel. So I knew if I went with a 185, 65, or 70, it would be the same overall height as the 195 60s that were on there. But they'd actually wind up being too tall because the tires that were on there barely fit height-wise. And like I said, they were stretched a good amount because that was literally a 9-inch wheel in the back of the car. So I know you are not a huge fan of stretched tires. I am not a huge fan of stretched tires. The car actually drove not great with those tires on it. So I was looking to get rid of the stretched look, obviously, and the wheels that I was switching to were a 14x6. So it's significantly smaller than the 15x8, 15x9 combo that was on the car, which a 1980 Corolla has no business having a 15x9 wheel on it. Like the car came with like 13x4.5. That's an obnoxiously large wheel for that car. So going down to the 14x6s is an aggressive up from the original factory size, but it's a nice period correct look for the car. I shouldn't say 15x9s have no business being on the car. If that's the look you're into, that's fine. It's just not the look I'm into. I want something that looks more period. Like I want the car to look like somebody owned it in 1980 and modified it. Maybe the second owner in 1982 modified it and put those wheels on it. You know what I mean? So I wound up going with, backtrack a little bit. One of the best tires in the 14-inch sizing is the Falcon, was it RT615K now? RT615K.
Yes.
So those come in a 195/60. But I also know that that particular tire runs smaller overall, as far as overall sidewall height, than a 195/60 like normal passenger car tire, because they have a more square profile to them, and they've always been just a little bit shorter. So I was like, that's probably going to be a little large. Maybe I'll do it. I'm annoyed because I don't want to run these like super cheap Chinese tires, and you were kind of shaming me into buying the nicer Falcons, because you're right. The tread patterns look weird. The sidewalls look bad. Not that the Falcons are period correct for the car either, but at least they'd be purposeful. But I couldn't bring myself to do it because those tires were $111 each plus installation. By the time all was said and done, I would have been into them for like almost $600. And I don't need an aggressive like autocross track day tire on the car right now because I haven't dialed in the suspension. It needs the suspension like gone through, not just dialed in. It needs new shocks, struts, bushings in the front. I have plans to do all this down the road, but those tires also don't have great tread life. So without my suspension settings being like 100% dialed in, I didn't want to put on these tires that were going to aggressively wear out for more money than I could get other tires for. There is a company now called GT Radial. I don't know if you've heard of them at all. They're a Chinese tire company, but they make their tires for the American market in South Carolina. So that's kind of cool. At least they're an American manufactured tire. They look very much like a BF Goodrich Radial TA as far as the overall design of the tire is, which is a tire that would have been available in the early 80s. So it fit aesthetically on the car. The sidewalls don't look terrible, and it says like GT Radial or Radial GT, which is better than saying Linglong or Crosswind or some other tire name that sounds ridiculous. So it just, they look fine. They're better, and they're $60 each. So all told, tires ordered, mounted, balanced on the car was less than $400. So I think that was a pretty good deal for a decent tire, and it's got a 60,000 mile tread life or a 50,000 mile tread life. So they're not going to wear out right away. Not that tread life matters tremendously on a car I don't drive every day, but like I said, I didn't need an autocross tire. I wanted something that looked decent, and these fit the bill. And I think after you've seen a picture of them, they don't look terrible, right? So I think I did okay.
I
think I did okay. So I bought them from our big tire shop out here. Well, it's not like just out here. It's a big tire shop all over the country, Discount Tire. So we have a credit card with them that's actually 0% interest for 6 months on every purchase over $200. So it just makes sense to buy tires from them and pay them off that way because it's just easier. So there is a slight story at the tire shop. I brought them the wheels with the specific instructions that like, hey, these are not replaceable. I can't get new ones. They're very old. Please let me know if they're out of round. Also, here are 4 brand new valve stems of the chrome metal variety. Can you put those on the wheels for me? And the guy's like, yeah, of course. These are awesome. I love these. The guy was totally into it. So he says, come back in 1 o'clock or so and pick them up. Perfect. That'll give me time to go home and actually hang the fenders in the car. So I dropped them off, came back here to put the fenders in the car, started working on that. I got a call at like noontime that they were ready. Went down to pick them up. They had the rubber valve stems in them. And I was like, oops, it's annoying. The guy's like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, he noticed it like before he even brought them out to me. He goes, I just noticed they have rubber valve stems in them. He goes, I'm going to have him slap those, take the tires back off or break them down and change the valve stems for you. So I was like, all right, I don't have to complain about that. He's like, it'll probably take us 20 minutes. Do you mind waiting? That's absolutely not. That's fine. The problem with that is now I'm betting the tire installer's annoyed because he's going to do this whole job again. And he obviously rushed through it the second time. because I got it back, and as we talked about earlier, there's a rubber seal on the top and bottom of these valve stems. And each and every one of them he over tightened. And the rubber seal was like ovular, no longer round, and like pinched in between the wheel and the valve stem. So I was like, I went back inside the shop and I was like, hey, these are going to leak. He sprays water on it. I was like, they're not leaking. I was like, yeah, they're not leaking now. I said, but the seal is not on the wheel correctly. These are going to leak eventually. And I'm going to be annoyed because I'll go out to drive my car and I'll have a flat tire. I was like, and I don't want that. I'd rather you just fix these for me. Because not only are they going to leak, but they look bad. Like they had like a big black spot next to the valve stem. Like, can we just fix these? He's like, oh, we already broke them down twice. I'm like, not really my fault. So manager comes out, looks at him. He's like, talks to Kate. He's like, dude, like you obviously over tightened these. He's like, I know the customer brought these, but we actually do install these in some of our wheels. You know how to do this. What are you doing? So they took them all back in again, and I don't think they had to break them down to fix them. They were able to fix them from the outside. So far so good. But they look a lot better. They're on the car. Car looks awesome. Giving it that much more sidewall than it had before, not having stretched 195 60s and having like actual like period correct meaty sidewalls. I mean, the car doesn't ride great because it's got cut springs and 4-inch blocks in the back, but it rides a lot better than it did. It's not nearly as punishing. Not every little crack in the road you can feel. And on top of that, it just looks cool. It sits, it's got a great stance. It's everything I envisioned when I got the car in the first place. So the next thing on the car is going to be the exhaust. I need to fix the 2 like sideways 4-inch tips that come out the back, or 3-inch tips at the back, or how big they are. They're big. And put on something that's a little more also era and style appropriate. And on top of that, make the car a little bit quieter because it is pretty loud. So, but I'm stoked. It sits really nice. I took a couple quick snapshots that I put on my personal Instagram page yesterday, just in the driveway. But I haven't had a chance to take it out and like take some proper pictures. So, hoping I have some time tomorrow. Actually, I have to use it to pick up some parts. So I'll be able to do that. Actually, that's a future project car update. I can do that right now too. Also one of the fenders had like numbers you'd put in the side of like a boat that said 83, which is the year the fenders came off of were. So the round headlight Corollas like mine are 1 year only. They're 1980 only, and that's it. In 81, they went to a square headlight and a much bigger triangle turn signal. So the fenders are totally different. So the car they came off of was actually an 83, but somebody had swapped the nose to an 80 nose because they had preferred the quad rounds over the square headlights. So whoever owned the car, previous to the guy who owns it now, had put 83 on the fender. I'm assuming for the year because that makes sense. But like I said, they weren't like anything other than stickers that you buy at Home Depot with numbers on them. So they definitely did not fit my style. And on top of that, it was the wrong year for the car. So I was able to remove those because I'm very experienced with removing stickers now from buying the 944. I was able to remove those with some Goo Gone and the rubber wheel and get those off pretty quickly. So that's off the car now too. But tomorrow I have to go pick up some parts, actually RX-7 parts, because I have a long dormant RX-7 project back east. And one of the parts that I've never been able to find is a front bumper for the correct S2 style front bumper with the body color rub strip and everything. Well, I went down to the body shop that did my Cressida, the body man that did my Cressida. When he did my Cressida, he was working out of his house, but he started his own shop now in Tempe. So I went down there last week to talk to him about doing a couple small things on the Corolla. And he was doing an RX-7 convertible in the paint booth. and he was showing me everything he was doing, and it's a full aftermarket, like, wide body drift car kit. And I was just talking to him about it, and I was like, if you ever do come across a front bumper for one of these, I am looking for one. I do have this same car. It's a white 91 convertible, just like this one. And he goes, oh, you can probably have the one that came off the car. And I was like, okay. He's like, well, he just said to get rid of everything that was on the car because he doesn't need it anymore because they're going full custom. He's like, so anything that was in the car, you can just have. I was like,
You get fenders too?
okay. No fenders, but I already have fenders, so that's fine. So I got a front bumper cover. I got almost a complete interior, a set of wheels, and a convertible top, and a bunch of other odds and ends. So
Neat.
yeah, the car's being built into a full race car, so he doesn't need any of that stuff. So I get
Full race car convertible.
yeah, it's a drift car, whatever.
Oh yeah, they like to do that. It's kind of cool actually.
Yeah, they put the full cage in
'Cause
there.
they do like
and-
that exo
yep.
cage. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, but it looks like it was a really nice car to start with, so it's kind of a shame, but there's also like a million of these convertibles out there. So, but now I have a nice mint condition front bumper for the car. So that's the last step in that car. Unfortunately, the gentleman in Massachusetts who is going to fix the front of the car is having some issues health-wise and currently not working as a body man and may not be ever coming back to it. So I need to find somebody else to do the work. But at least now I have the bumper because that was one of the last pieces that I needed. So a friend of ours has been talked about in the podcast before, has a parts car RX-7 with the front inner sheet metal that I need. I just need to get that from him next time I'm in New England. So that thing's going to move along pretty quickly because everything's got to get done, right? So that's the next one to get done. But yeah, that's my project car updates for the week. Pretty
Cool.
productive week, actually.
Yeah, I like the way the wagon came out. Looks good.
Thank you. No, I'm pretty stoked on it. I did a ton of work in a short period of time, I think, and I've made it very different. I'd like to change the or repair the rear fenders and a couple things, but overall I need to just buckle down and get it done. So I'm happy so far. It'll be this weekend is Shakedown at 404, so I plan on bringing it out for its first like public unveiling. So
Nice.
yeah. Anyway, what else is going on, Andrew?
Not much. We got Daytona coming up.
We do. Yeah, it's been Sunday of sports because we had the Clash 2 weeks ago. This week was Super Bowl, and next week is Daytona.
Yeah, so qualifying must be this
Qualifying
week.
is this week. So,
And I know, Pastrana announced that he was stepping back from a lot of racing, but I believe he was still intending to try to qualify for the Daytona.
Pastrana is going to be at Daytona. Well, he's going to at least try to qualify for Daytona.
Attempt to qualify. Yeah.
I think he's doing it with 23XI, right? Or 2311, I guess.
Yeah.
So he's driving the 67 car. It'll be interesting. I don't know if he's gonna. I don't know what the qualifying rules are, or who's qualifying, or how it works, but it should be fun. He's only running that one race, so
Weird.
yeah, it's weird, but whatever. We'll start to see when qualifying is. I was just looking it up real quick to see.
I mean, he talked about, he's stepped away from rally before, and he basically just had an announcement, I think it was last week, that he wants to be around his family more, especially after seeing Ken Block pass away. He realized, like, oh, I should probably spend time with my family.
Right.
Which you should.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, he doesn't really have anything to prove.
No, he doesn't need any more money, probably.
Nobody questions how good a driver he is. He can step back and do choice events if he wants.
Right. I apologize if you hear noises. My neighbor next door bought a motorcycle today and is out in the driveway playing with it. So.
Nope, can't hear it.
Because I can't, and I'm annoyed.
What is it?
It is probably, I'd guess, a early 2000s Suzuki Bandit 600. It's kind of
Hmm.
the sport tour style. It has the has the fairing on it. So it's basically the Suzuki sport bike, but with a fairing up top and upright bars. So it's
Okay.
it's a neat bike. I like them a lot. They do a 600 and a 1200, and I'm excited for him to have the bike. It's literally right outside the window that I'm recording is their driveway, and I can hear it idling right now and revving a little. So if you hear a couple quick revs, it's probably what it is. Qualifying starts Wednesday,
All right.
so be a hell of an end of the week. So Wednesday, yeah, actually Wednesday's, yeah, Wednesday. Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Super Bowl was yesterday, or excuse me, the big game, so we don't get sued.
Well, hold on. Before we get off Daytona,
Okay.
you got any predictions for a winner?
No. Should I?
No? I don't know.
Do you?
I don't know. I'm going to go Bubba Wallace.
I'd love to see it.
I think it's his
I'd
year.
love to see it, but I don't think he's going to win the first race of the year.
All right.
Probably it's going to be I think, let's see, who won last year? I don't remember now. I think it's going to be a named normal driver. It's not going to be a new name. Obviously, I think that you're not too far off there. Bubba Wallace might have a good shot, but I don't think it's going to be his year. I think it's going to be somebody.
He's a pretty good super speedway driver.
No question. But I think it's going to be somebody who we're used to seeing. Maybe a Kyle Busch. Maybe. Oh, is it Austin Dillon? Or Chase Elliott probably. I'll go with my guy. I'm a Chase Elliott fan, so I predict Chase Elliott.
He'll be up there. He'll be in the top 10.
Yeah. I'd say Chase Elliott, or maybe even Denny Hamlin. Who knows?
Yeah.
Harvick's got a bunch of wins. It's so hard to predict because once qualifying's done, people have better thoughts. But there's nothing to show what's happening yet. So I'll put Chase up there for now and go from there. So
who is the other Trackhouse drivers? Ross Chastain. You have Suarez, and yeah, that could be a Trackhouse car.
Actually, you know what we didn't talk about?
Suarez, but
we didn't talk about last week. The news that NASCAR has kind of banned wall riding.
Well, they talked about doing that after the race.
Right, but they officially did it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody would do it again anyways.
Well, they wouldn't do it, but they basically said, don't do it again. But it's interesting because they didn't flat out ban just wall riding. They made it a very gray rule, which I don't like. They said if any driver does anything to gain position that they consider to be dangerous, it will be illegal.
Yeah.
It just seems too open.
What do you mean too open?
To be open to interpretation. Like anything NASCAR deems dangerous in order to gain a position is now illegal. Well, how do you know what they're going to determine to be too dangerous?
Oh,
is it going to be
most guys that do crazy stuff?
No, but could they make a bump and run in the last turn? Well, you hit them too hard. Now you've been pulled. Your victory's been pulled.
Oh, probably not. But like, if you cut the last corner of the road course,
sure,
at like 100 without braking, like a video game move,
sure,
then yeah, that would be too dangerous.
All right. Well, we'll see how it plays out, but basically the rule was put in place to ban the wall ride that happened from happening in the future. So,
well, yeah, but the other thing, like, I mean, I could see they've had finishes like this at like Daytona where like guys get together,
sure,
right before like the tri-oval, and like one of the cars is like scraping across the wall as it finishes. So like you wouldn't want to disqualify somebody for that.
Well, no, but that's not a competitive advantage.
Not necessarily their fault.
Yeah. But the person who put him into the wall, is it not going to be like, oh, you're disqualified because you put a guy into the wall to pass him?
Well, I mean, they kind of do that already. They will fine you if you hit somebody really hard. That's
sure,
like clearly intentional. Speaking of, I think Bubba Wallace had a hit like that last
Yep.
season. I forget who he put into the wall, but it was like
It was the fight between
on, dude,
him
that's
and
a bit.
It was the fight between
Yeah.
him and number 5. Who's number 5?
I can't remember.
He's the biggest freaking NASCAR driver. He won the championship 2 years ago. Kyle Larson.
Carl Larson. Yeah.
It was him and Larson had that thing where they got together. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
I'm excited for NASCAR to
it's
start
kind
again,
of
that's all I
like,
know.
yeah. And they kind of, 10, 15 years ago, they were doing the pro wrestling thing, but kind of still do a little bit, but it's not as bad. Like there's no reason for a driver to be a heel, right? Like that's just dumb. Like I don't know. I don't know. A guy can just be a jerk on his own, I guess.
Yeah, look at
Or a cool
look at
person.
the Bushes.
Yeah.
Or Kyle Larson. They do a pretty good job of making people hate him without trying very hard. It is what it is. Or sometimes
Austin Dillon.
Yeah, Austin Dillon will. Yeah, he tries really hard for people to hate him. He has a reality show where people see everything. Or a guy like Kevin Harvick is just, he's old and grumpy now, and he's old grumpy Kevin Harvick. That's just who he's become.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm excited to watch it again. I would like to see Bubba win. I'd like to see Chase Elliott win, but I like to see anybody but Kyle Larson win. How's that sound?
All right,
Yeah.
fair enough.
I'll certainly have feelings towards the end of the race, and I'll have more feelings once I see how qualifying goes, and we can discuss it all in next week's episode.
And honestly, if you want to get into it, if you're like, it's boring, you don't have to watch the whole race. Just watch the final stage.
Yeah, I'd say the last quarter of the race is, if you're not going to be into the whole thing, that's the best to do. Watch the first 30, 40 laps, and then come back for the last quarter or so.
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be a big one.
Yep.
And we'll see how that shakes out.
It's Super Speedway. That's what happens every time.
Yep, because they'll never get away from restrictor plate.
Nope.
But
when the cars are too fast. Bill Elliott did 212 mile an hour qualifying run, 89. So the cars
and those cars were
come that far from 89, they'd probably be a 290 mile an hour qualifying run now. Maybe not that high. It'd be something dumb. So it's too fast. So they'll be restrictor plate racing forever on the super speedways.
I saw something the other day, and I don't remember what year it was, but Bill Elliott was like the first driver to win over $1 million in prize money in a season.
So he's $1 million bill.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the first. Awesome Bill from Dawsonville. $1 million bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of his nicknames. And that's part of the reason why I like Chase Elliott, obviously, because growing up with Bill Elliott being such a successful race car driver, it's hard not to want to vote for his son to be up there as well. Plus, his son's a pretty down-to-earth, normal guy. Like, he's not bad or good. He's just there, and I like that.
Oh, he's good at road courses.
He's very good at road courses, which is also probably why I like him. Just because he's...
But I think it's funny because I don't think Elliott was.
Bill
Elliott
was
was?
road courses. Absolutely.
All right.
He was overshadowed by Dale Earnhardt because Dale Earnhardt was really good at road courses, and all the drivers at the time were better. Billy wasn't bad. You had like Terry Labonte was a great road course driver. Dale Earnhardt was a great road course driver. There were so many people that used to come in just to do road courses too back then. They'd be like SCCA drivers.
What I still find remarkable, and what was cool, what makes the sport so cool is you had drivers that went from the late 50s and 60s all the way into the 80s
and 90s.
And some of them made it to the 90s.
When did Richard Petty stop driving? 93, 94? And his first victory was in like 1961 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah. And you had guys, I bet Dale Sr., had he not passed away, I bet he would have went till probably the mid 2000s.
Oh, easily. He would have gone to the same kind of era that a lot of those guys went, a lot of the big names went. Let's see. I need to look right now. Richard Petty. Richard Petty's racing
and
career
it's-
was 1958 to 1992.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then, like we've talked about this before. Now all the guys who were top drivers when we were kids are now in the
Sure.
booth,
Which is the same with a lot of
and
sports.
now, yeah, and now a lot of the guys that were coming up when we were younger are also starting to retire. So now you're getting into like,
or even have already retired in the booth, like Jeff Gordon. Like Jeff Gordon didn't start until the early
Yeah.
90s. I remember him
Yeah.
he was the hated driver and loved driver. You either loved Jeff Gordon or you hated Jeff Gordon. And the old guard hated Jeff Gordon because he was this new kid, was coming in, had all the money for the big team, and was winning all the
California.
races. Yeah, he was from California. He wasn't a good old boy. He was sometimes a little bit whiny about things, more so than some of the other drivers. But he was a really good driver, and he was winning a lot, and people hated him. But also, he brought a ton of new fans to the sport when he came in, because there are a lot of people who do care about the personalities a lot more and weren't going to be there to watch a 60-year-old man race his car anymore. They wanted to see some new young blood out there, and that's what Jeff Gordon represented. I mean, to put it into perspective, and apologies to my father for throwing his age out there, but my father was born in 1957, and that means that Richard Petty started racing when he was 1 year old and didn't stop racing until his son was 11. My father's son, me. Like, that is a wild amount of time. So to think about the fact that this man started in basically jalopy race cars, like a stock car with like a stock car, and finished in the era of wind tunnels is just it's a bizarre amount of time. I can't even fathom doing that one thing, doing it so well, and being able to do it for, let's do quick math, 88 is 30 years, so 35 years. That's crazy.
It's kind of unprecedented in motorsports. It's like the only motorsport that old guys can still be competitive.
Yeah. And that at the same time doesn't mean that it's not a physical sport, because these guys still do need to be physical in order to be successful. And that's part of the reason he did retire, because he couldn't be competitive anymore. So I don't know. It's super cool. I'm into it. I love NASCAR again. No shame. For a while, people would say, "Oh, you like cars and you like racing?" You'd be like, "Yeah, what about NASCAR?" I'd be like, "No, I don't like NASCAR." But I've stopped caring about that. I like NASCAR again, and it's fine.
No, I like it again. It's cool.
Absolutely.
It's on every Sunday. It's easy to watch.
It's easy to watch, easy to get into. It's easy to follow. There's plenty of coverage. And once the
rules aren't weird.
Well, they're a little harder now than they used to be with the stages and everything. But once you get into it,
There's passing.
There's a lot of passing. Yeah, which is the one thing we complain about F1. We can't figure out F1 because
I'm sorry, I don't understand it, and I don't understand why people are into it.
Well,
I think it's just like a thing to be into.
It's funny because there are people who are genuinely into it, who have been into it since before the whole Drive to Survive thing happened. And those people, I am totally cool with being into it. But it's just like, I don't know if every town has the same issue that, we had in Boston with the Pink Hats. The Red Sox started doing good. The Celtics started doing good. The Bruins started doing good. The Pats started doing good all at the same time. And they started selling hats that were pink with their logos on it. And you'd be like, person in a pink hat, that was a new fan. And I feel like there's a lot of that in F1 right now because of that TV show. But I also know there are people who like truly dedicated to F1 and have been their entire lives and care about the minutia and the details and all that stuff that I can't be bothered with. And what blows my mind with that is I have the same argument for people who say NASCAR is boring. I say, well, you have to get into it. You have to understand. You have to know the strategy, know what's going on, know why it's going on. But even though that's the excuse I give for being into NASCAR, it's the same reason I don't like Formula One. Because Formula One is all about the strategy. It's less about the actual on-track stuff, it seems.
I don't know all the details about endurance racing. I still enjoy it because the racing's
Sure.
good. So I call myself a casual motorsports enjoyer instead of the person that gets all obsessed over it
I think
and has to know all the
I think
details.
my biggest thing with motorsports is I love looking at race cars.
That's the thing. I like race
Yep.
cars, and I'm not necessarily like a super driver fan. I'm like, all right, who's out front and who's battling?
Sure.
And that's what I'm interested in.
And also part of my race car love is I like race cars that look like they were born from street cars. Whether they were or not is not important, but if it looks like it was, I'm more into it. NASCAR cars, full fenders, are somewhat representative of something you'd see on the street. Formula One cars are just rocket ships with wheels. It's just like we talked about the GTP cars. I'm less into those than I am the GTD cars, because the GTD car is a Porsche, it's a Lamborghini, it's an Aston Martin, it's a representative
Corvette.
It's a Corvette, it's a Ford GT. It's representative of a street car. It's representative of something that you could theoretically go out and buy and have, obviously not the same experience with, but have that vehicle in your life. It's why both of us love 90s touring cars, because 90s touring cars were essentially street cars turned into race cars. I mean, they weren't because they were chassis in white, whatever, but there were panels in the car that you would unbolt and put them on your street car and they would work.
Which, speaking of, Corvette had like their 25th anniversary of the modern Corvette team.
Okay.
They've been doing that 25 years, which is pretty crazy.
Starting with what? The C4?
Nope. The C5.
C5 is 25 years old now?
1998.
Yeah, I guess. We had that same conversation about the new Beetle a few weeks back, right?
Yep. Wow. So it's interesting
speaking of Dale
because, Corvette, Corvette had a long history of racing before that, but they really didn't have huge success until the modern era. They've been like incredibly successful with the C5 with the newer cars.
Well, but also we just talked about street-based race cars. The C5 was the first Corvette that was truly considered to be a world-class sports car. So when you start with a world-class sports car, it's probably easier to make a successful race car, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some C3 Corvettes that were like really good-looking race cars, just not super successful all the time.
No, they weren't as successful as the Fords. But I don't know, cool stuff.
Pretty cool. Excellent.
Anyway, I think that's a podcast, my friend.
I like it.
All right, cool. So follow us on Off Topic Podcast on Facebook, on Off Topic on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram, Race and Anger. I'm also Race and Anger on Twitter. Go to parkedintheblock.com. Check out all the cars we're posting over there. Brad, you've been doing a ton of posting, which is awesome.
I'm currently unemployed, so
go follow it. Go follow it on Instagram, Parked on the Block. There's also a Twitter for it, Parked on the Block, BLOC. Ran out of characters. And Brad, where can they find you?
They can find me at that same place, obviously at all of the social medias related to this podcast. And they can find me at TSISS350 on Instagram and DeSantis_Brad on Twitter. I did just do 2 posts this afternoon on Parked on the Block. One of them is about a Volvo that has lost its engine. And it was an impressive engine, which is why I wrote about it. And one of them is about a Infiniti M30 that I'm a little salty about because I actually tried to buy and didn't quite pull it off. And now it's on an auction site somewhere at a time when I am not in a position to buy it. So, whiny Brad.
All right, cool. So anyway, as always, keep cars analog and aim for the roses.